it didn't occur to me until this week, meditating on this scripture, that I saw Jesus 21 years ago. It was 1999 in eastern North Carolina. We'd been hit by Hurricane Floyd in September, and it poured torrential rain that overflowed every river, every creek, every stream, and every ditch in just a devastating, catastrophic way. I was living in Greenville, North Carolina, and we were actually an island for a while. The only way to get in and out of town was by helicopter or by boat. There was no power for weeks, and that means no gas stations, no ATMs, no stores were open. And then the water got contaminated, so the only water we could get came in the National Guard truck that would stop every day. In the face of such devastation and the lives that were affected, it was hard to know just what to do. People were flooded out of their homes. This was called a 500-year flood. It was that rare. And the cheapest housing was in the floodplain, the 500-year floodplain. There were hourly workers who could not go to work because their employers were either flooded out or couldn't open up. And then there were also those who were farm workers. They couldn't get in the fields either. Some of those jobs never came back. Well, we did what we could do, and in fact, it was really inspiring because the community just came together. Strangers were helping others as neighbors. I had people that I had never seen before, would never see again, just saying, well, this mom and pop gas station out in the country, they got a pump running with their generator, and so we'd all run out to get gas out there. And then another would say to us out at the gas station, well, I heard that the hardware store over here has got their generator running for a couple of hours, and you can get charcoal there, because that's all we had to cook on. And so people were pulling together like that. We were taking our donations to the old Ben Franklin store that had been gutted and was an eyesore, but had become the donation center. I was able to get word out to Week of Compassion to send 5-gallon buckets that were filled with cleanup supplies that had been packed by disciple congregations across the country. And when the highways allowed, that truckload came in, and our church people turned out in droves and unloaded the truck and distributed them to everyone who was affected by the flooding. But unless you could get somewhere to see the flood, it was hard to imagine the scope. I could see it from where I lived. And let me tell you, it stinks. Floodwater stinks because it has all that sewage and just everything else in it. But again, it was hard to just comprehend it. And it was also hard to know where to start, where to help exactly. They had all the help they need, all the volunteers at the collection center. One of our grad students in the church family was managing a Red Cross shelter in one of the elementary schools, so I went out there and found a little bit to do. It was really strange being there. There was no power, so the halls were fairly dark. People were spilling out of classrooms out into the hallway, just that's where they slept. And it was also eerily quiet, too, despite all these people being there. I was walking down one hallway, and I recognized a 10-year-old boy that our church had sent to our regional disciple church camp just a couple of months before. He'd been in my cabin because they would put the ones that we had sent in my cabin, the boys. Sid and Nancy Dunn had provided a scholarship for him to go. One of the teachers in the congregation had recommended him for this opportunity. he was sitting there kind of nestled in these wadded up blankets on the hard terrazzo floor because the Red Cross had run out of mats. And he had a stunned look, that 1,000-yard stare that people have when they've just been traumatized. And when school started, our teachers in the church would tell about how some of the children would start crying whenever it started to rain. They would start to panic. Some had to be rescued off of rooftops or the tops of their cars. So he's sitting there, and I speak to him, and he looks up and he recognizes me. And in that moment, I'm praying to the Lord because I had no idea what to do for him. None at all. I don't know what to do for him. But I asked him if I could sit down with him, and he said, sure. And I sat down on that hard terrazzo floor with him, and the only thing I could think of to do was just listen. And he told his story, what had happened to him and his family, and then he started to talk about camp. And he talked about how much he enjoyed the guys in our cabin, meeting them, and how proud his parents were of what he had learned in Bible study. And I was so glad that the Lord had provided that for him to think about and remember there in the hallway. And I thought, how providential that I would come along, because he knew that I could relate and understand that what he was talking about as he told about camp. Well, after a while, he said, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to take a nap now. And I said, great. Our church will be praying for you. And we said our goodbyes. And afterwards, the Red Cross moved his family, I knew not where, so I never saw him again. But I have thought of him at various times over the last 21 years. And it was not until this week that I realized I had seen Jesus. Mother Teresa used to say that we see Jesus in a distressing disguise. What Jesus was talking about, the hungry, the thirsty. I had seen Jesus sitting there in a hallway, staring off into space in some crumpled blankets. And I didn't think I'd done anything for him. But I came to realize later through him that even listening to someone can be an act of mercy sometimes. And that I had seen Jesus. I don't know how, but I sure didn't realize it, and not for 21 years. You've seen him like this too. You've seen him in the distressing disguise, this Jesus, and you've reached out, not even knowing that this was Jesus. What a wonderful good news thing this is, that Jesus is not an abstract, that Jesus provided a way, so he's not an abstract concept, but flesh and blood. And these people that we show mercy to, who take hold of our heart so that we overcome any resistance we might have and push through that to show our mercy to them. And sometimes those people aren't too pleasant, but we do it anyway. What good news that is.